When we deal with the, let's begin by dealing with the placement of structures again. Now, the most posterior structure in the neck is the vertebral column. In this particular figure, you can see this is the occipital bone, this is the atlas, and thereafter the rest of the vertebra. Axis, C3, C4, C5, C6, C7. You can also see the first rib as well as the second rib. Now, anterior to the vertebral column are present muscles which are called the prevertebral group of muscles. Now, notice these two muscles which are running from the occiput to the atlas. These are rectus capitis anterior and rectus capitis lateralis. Now, we're not going to do them in detail, but you do understand that since they are running between the occiput and the atlas, they will be important for the movements which are taking place at the occipito-atlas jaw. Atlanto-occipital jaw. Thereafter, look at this muscle, which is running from the basi-occiput all the way down to the typical cervical, the first four typical cervical vertebrae, the transverse processes of the four typical cervical vertebrae. This is the longus capitis, and running from the atlas again on all the way down towards the mediastinum as well as the towards the various other vertebral bodies of the various cervical vertebra and the thoracic vertebra. So that means all the way down to the mediastinum. This is longus foli. Now all these muscles form the prevertebral muscles, and these prevertebral muscles are weak flexors which are present here. More laterally, you can see the scalenus anterior, the scalenus medius, and the scalenus posterior. Now, we've been dealing with the scalenes ever since we've done thorax. We've also talked about the scalenes in the triangles when we were dealing with the triangles, as well as when we did the cervical vertebra. So these are the scalenus muscles which are present more laterally. Now, anterior to the scalenes is present the carotid sheath. And between the carotid sheath and the scalenes is going to be present, or these prevertebral, between the carotid sheath and to the, anterior to these prevertebral group of muscles, especially these longus capitis and the longus foli, is present the carotid sheath. And in between these prevertebral muscles and the carotid sheath is present the cervical sympathetic ganglia. Now, for the neurovascular bundle also, you've seen as we are moving from the cranial to the caudal direction, the structures which are present in the carotid sheath keep varying. For example, in the lower part of the neck, the carotid sheath contains the common carotid artery. But as we move more cranially towards the skull, it is only the internal carotid artery which is present. Then similarly, near the skull, there are certain nerves which are which are exiting out from the jugular foramen or the hypoglossal canal. They are first within the carotid sheath or in close contact to the walls of the carotid sheath, and then they exit out. So this placement you need to understand. So what is the placement? Again, look at the transverse section. This is the vertebra, which we were talking here. This is the vertebra. So this is where the vertebral column is. These are the prevertebral group of muscles. More laterally are the scalenes. Okay? Anteriorly are the prevertebral groups. More laterally is the scalene. Then anterior to the prevertebral groups as well as the scalenus anterior will be the carotid sheath. Right? And between the carotid sheath as well as the prevertebral muscles is the cervical sympathetic trunk. Then the midline structures of the neck are the esophagus or the pharynx, depending on what level we are dealing with. Here it's the esophagus because we are at C6 cervical vertebra. Anterior to it is the trachea, and or would be the larynx in the upper reaches, and more anteriorly is present the thyroid gland. So the viscera is occupying the midline. Laterally is present the neurovascular bundle. Anteriorly are the muscles of the muscular triangle. On the side, it's getting wrapped. The head and neck is getting wrapped by the sternocleidomastoid as well as the trapezius with the cervical fascia. So, sabse piche, prevertebral group of muscles. When we're looking at this part of the neck, prevertebral group of muscles. Then we have the viscera in the midline and the neurovascular bundle, which is placed more laterally, and also the and also the most superficial muscles, that is the sternocleidomastoid. So basically what we are trying to do is we are understanding the placement, forming a 3D picture for us in our mind, so that when we have a disease or we have an enlargement within, or any enlargement of the lymph node, enlargement of the viscera, or any palsy which we are going to see, we are able to picturize what is the structure which is getting affected. Now let's start with the cervical sympathetic trunk. Now this is very important if we want to understand Horner syndrome. So we need to do this in detail to be able to understand that. The cervical sympathetic trunk, as we just discussed, is sandwiched between the prevertebral muscles, which was the longus capitis and the coli, and the carotid sheath. In between them is present the cervical sympathetic trunk in front of the transverse processes of the cervical vertebrae, in front of the roots of the transverse processes of the cervical vertebra. Now, if this is the same it is the continuation of the thoracic sympathetic trunk with which we dealt with in thorax. And agar aapko yaad ho, that thoracic sympathetic trunk was present in front of the neck of the ribs. So in that same position, if we go cranially, we will find the cervical part of the sympathetic trunk. It's the same sympathetic trunk which is extending all the way from the base of the skull to the coccyx. But we are studying it in parts. We are studying it in the neck. We are calling it as the cervical part. Then there is the thoracic part and the lumbar part, and then we are looking at it in the sacrum. So it's the same thing in this in the pelvis, the same thing which has been divided into parts for us to be able to study it carefully. But there are some variations or changes which are taking place at each level, which we'll understand as we go forward in this particular lecture. Now, what is this sympathetic trunk doing? The sympathetic trunk is transmitting the sympathetic information from the spinal cord, that is the sympathetic outflow from the spinal cord, is coming to these nerves, that is the peripheral nervous system, to the various components of the spinal nerves, and from here it's being distributed to the various structures. What are the structures which we want to innervate? We want to innervate in the skin. We want to innervate the sweat glands. We want to innervate the blood vessels of the skin. Then there is this entire component of sympathetic outflow to the viscera which is present, to the heart. We've seen to the abdominal organs. We've also seen it coming to the thyroid, to the otic ganglion, say parotid pe ja raha tha, through the pterygopalatine ganglion. There was outflow going towards the lacrimal gland, so that our body can respond to the emotional, to whatever stress which is coming to it. In the emotional aspect of it or the fear aspect of it, the response can be generated by the body. So for that, we have this sympathetic outflow. Right, there is a response to be generated for that, which this entire outflow is there, and ये outflow हमें ये sympathetic trunk के through मिल रहा है. Right, now let's start with the cervical sympathetic trunk. Now the cervical sympathetic trunk, we've done the location, is made up of 3 ganglia. So this is the first difference with the thoracic sympathetic trunk, part of the trunk. If you remember, the thoracic sympathetic trunk was made up of 11 to 12 ganglia. हर एक thoracic nerve का अपना ganglia था, जिसके पास white rami communicants and grey rami communicants आ रहे थे. But here we have 3 ganglia. These are the superior cervical ganglia. Then there is this part of the trunk, connecting trunk. Then there is the middle cervical ganglia. And again, there is the inferior cervical ganglia, and by means of the connecting trunk, it is going to be connected to the thoracic sympathetic ganglia. Now, the superior cervical ganglia is formed by the coalescence of the first 4 cervical ganglia. So instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, the ganglia 1, 2, 3, and 4 have united to form the superior cervical ganglia. Similarly, 5 and 6 have united to form the middle cervical ganglia, and C7 and C8 ganglia, along with the T1, have united to form the cervicothoracic or the inferior ganglia or the stellate ganglia, because it is star-shaped. So this would be near the base of the skull. Somewhere here would be the base of the skull. In front of C2, C3 transverse processes would be the superior ganglia. The middle would be in front of, it would be adjacent to the carotid tubercle, and this would be the inferior ganglia, which is present at the neck of the first strip, near the neck of the first strip. All right. So these are the ganglia. So first difference, वहां पर 11 से 12 ganglia थे अलग अलग अलग. यहाँ पर they have all fused together to form 3 ganglia, the superior, middle and inferior. The middle is the most inconstant one. The superior is the largest, and the inferior ganglia is present near the neck of the first strip. All right. Further. Now, the second difference. When we talked about the thoracic ganglia, so if you remember here, these were the lateral horn. This was the lateral horn. There was a lateral horn which is present in the spinal cord, in which the sympathetic neurons were present. The preganglionic neurons, मतलब यहाँ neurons थे और उनके जो axons थे, they arose, they passed through the ventral root, entered into the trunk of the spinal cord, and from the trunk of the spinal cord, they entered into the ventral rami. From the ventral rami, the white rami communicans, which was a branch of the ventral rami, entered into the sympathetic ganglia. Now, this carried the preganglionic sympathetic fibers, which either synapsed in the ganglia, or instead of synapsing, they ascended through the ganglia, or they descended to the lower levels, or they formed the splanchnic nerves and exited out, or they formed the cardiac nerves and exited out and went towards the viscera. Right? This was what we had seen in the thoracic part of the sympathetic trunk. Now, the next difference is that there is no white rami communicans which is coming in the cervical part of the sympathetic trunk. So, where do the preganglionic neurons come from? So, ये जो preganglionic neurons were coming in, they come from the T1 to T5 thoracic sympathetic ganglia. So, वो जो preganglionic neurons अंदर आए, they did not synapse. Instead, they ascended through the trunk. And they ascended through the trunk. So, let's get in some fibers. They ascended through the trunk and then synapsed in the superior cervical ganglia, or they synapsed in the middle cervical ganglia, or they synapsed in the inferior cervical ganglia. So instead of having their own white rami communicants, there was no white rami communicants coming into these 3 ganglias. Instead, they get in their the preganglionic sympathetic information to them comes through this connecting trunk, which is connecting it through the thoracic part of the sympathetic trunk. This is very important. You need to understand this. If you understood this, half the job is done. Now, from these ganglia, now when these preganglionic fibers have synapsed in the ganglia, the postganglionic neurons arise, which forms the various branches of these ganglia. So from the superior ganglia, first arises the gray rami communicants, which go to the C1, C2, C3 and C4 nerves. C1, C2, C3 and C4 nerves. So these are the gray rami communicants. So white rami communicants नहीं है, but gray rami communicants है जो cervical nerves के पास गए और यहाँ से वो skin के various counterparts पर के पास पहुंच गए. Also, arising from each of these ganglia are the cardiac nerves. Each of the ganglia, all the 3 ganglia will give rise to the cardiac nerves, which will take part in the formation of the deep cardiac plexus. So from the neck, we have these nerves, the cardiac nerves, which are arising from the superior, the middle, and the inferior ganglia. These cardiac nerves are passing from the neck and going to the thorax to give the sympathetic supply to the heart. Why do you think that neck से heart के पास innervation आ रही है? Because if you remember during development, for some time, the heart was a resident of the neck. So that is when this innervation, these nerve fibers came in, and then the heart descended and these nerves descended with it to reach the heart. Okay. Now, the next set of nerves which arise from the ganglia, now we're talking about the superior ganglia again, are the ones which run along the blood vessels. So if you remember, each of the blood vessels which we've studied in the head and neck area, we've said that uske around sympathetic nerves are winding around. So ye sympathetic nerves, these are the postganglionic sympathetic fibers which are arising from these ganglion and running along these blood vessels. So along the internal carotid artery, when it enters into the carotid canal, it carries the sympathetic outflow to the brain and to the muscles of the eye, which went via the ciliary ganglia, to the various components of the brain via this branch which is arising from the superior cervical ganglia, which is known as the internal carotid nerve. From here, the innervation goes along the branches of the internal carotid artery to the muscles of the pupil, the dilator pupillary muscle, to the tarsal muscles, and even the levator palpebrae superioris, which was getting part of it, which was getting supply from the sympathetic outflow. It also goes via forms the carotid tympanic. It also sends nerves to the carototympanic plexus in the middle ear. It also forms the deep petrosal nerve, if you remember, right? So this nerve which is arising from it is known as the internal carotid nerve. It winds around the internal carotid artery, and via its branches, it goes and supplies the various components in the eye, in the middle ear, and also goes to the pterygopalatine ganglia to go to the lacrimal gland and to the palatine glands and the nasal glands. Then a branch also arises, which you've seen, which is running along with the branches of the external carotid artery. So this is the external carotid artery. So how have I distinguished them? Internal carotid artery, I have not given it any branches because वो अंदर चली गई brain में, neck अंदर चली गई skull में, sorry, and उसके neck में कोई branches नहीं थी. And we've now formed the external carotid artery which branches in the neck. So to it also we have the external carotid nerve which is winding around and going around its various branches, and via its branches it is now going to be supplying, as you saw, it will be supplying the it will goes around the submandibular gland by going around the branches of the lingual artery, by going along the branches of the facial artery. It goes to the various glands which we saw, submandibular, the sublingual, to the parotid, middle meningeal के around जाके वो parotid के पास, via the otic ganglia, without synapsing in it, it went to the parotid. So all these glands get their sympathetic innervation from along the branches of the external carotid artery. Then it also sends a pharyngeal branch which takes part in the pharyngeal plexus, which is going to be C. So this is how the superior cervical ganglia gives rise to the various branches which now run along either the arteries or just join the cervical nerves directly and supply the sympathetic component to the various parts, to the head and neck viscera as well as to the skin of the head and neck. Okay. Then comes the next, the middle cervical ganglia. This is the middle cervical ganglia, which may be inconstant. It is present near the inferior thyroid artery. Now, it has also given rise to a the cardiac nerve, which has gone to the deep cardiac plexus, and it gives gray rami communicants to C5 and C6. Matlab, it's going to the upper limb. The sympathetic outflow to the upper limb via the brachial plexus. And it gives rise to branches, sympathetic outflow to the thyroid gland. As I told you, it's in your C6. So वहाँ पर ही the inferior thyroid artery arises and it goes along the branches of the inferior thyroid artery and goes to the thyroid. The sympathetic flow to the thyroid gland comes from here. Now it does one more thing. From this now in front of the inferior cervical ganglia, somewhere here, would be present the subclavian artery, and from it is arising the vertebral artery. Okay, so this is the subclavian artery which is present near the inferior cervical ganglia. वो root of the neck पर है, तो वहाँ subclavian artery पड़ी हुई है. Now, the middle cervical ganglia also gives rise to a nerve which loops around the subclavian artery and goes to the inferior cervical ganglia. This nerve is known as ansa subclavia. Okay? So it is looping around the subclavian artery and going on to the inferior cervical ganglia. The inferior cervical ganglia, apart from giving rise to the cardiac nerves, which is going to the deep cardiac plexus, gives rise to the gray rami, for C7, again brachial plexus C8, as well as the T1. That is the sympathetic outflow which is going to the brachial plexus. And it also sends the outflow which goes around, sympathetic outflow which goes around the branches of the subclavian, the vertebral artery, all these other arteries. So it is also sending these branches. So this is what this is the cervical part of the sympathetic trunk, and the branches which are arising from its various ganglia and the connecting, and you also know now what is the component of the connecting trunk. The connecting trunk is carrying the preganglionic fibers from the thoracic region, all the way up to the ganglion cells which are present either in the superior ganglia, in the middle ganglia, or in the inferior ganglia, right? So in case, please, now this is what is needed for the Horner syndrome. In case there is a lesion out here, that is, there is a lesion at the neck of the first strip due to, and how did we see? If there was a tumor at the apex of the, apex of the lung, the Pancoast tumor, we saw that it could metastasize and it could involve the surrounding structures. So it could involve the cervical sympathetic trunk, this part of the trunk which is connecting the thoracic trunk to the cervical sympathetic trunk, or it could involve the inferior cervical ganglia. If there was carcinomas of the thyroid, that here they could spread out here because वो infiltrate कर जाते, or Hodgkin's lymphomas, all these are cancers of the esophagus, or in case there is a cervical rib which compresses these structures which are present at the area of the neck of the first rib, then the connection, there would be a destruction of the trunk at the root of the neck, isolating the cervical sympathetic trunk, from the thoracic sympathetic trunk, and via that is from the CNS, from where the sympathetic outflow is coming. That is, the CNS and PNS would get dissociated with each other, PNS of the head and neck region. And this would result in a condition known as Horner syndrome, which prevents the body from responding to reflex and emotional changes which take place due to stress. Now, this would result in Horner's syndrome. What is Horner syndrome? Let's do that. So the lesion of the sympathetic trunk in the area of the root of the neck or anywhere in the neck results in dissociating the cervical sympathetic trunk from the CNS. The ascending white rami fibers, the preganglionic sympathetic fibers from the upper 4 to 5 thoracic ganglia, are unable to reach the sympathetic trunk, as a result of which the structures which are supplied by this sympathetic trunk do not get the sympathetic outflow. This causes, so number one, we saw that the internal carotid nerve via the ophthalmic artery, the internal carotid artery, and then its branch, the ophthalmic artery, was sending fibers to the dilator pupillae of the iris. So now that it does not get any supply. That means this dilator pupillae is paralyzed, causing contraction of the pupil, which is known as miosis, and which results in contraction of the pupil. So now the pupil does not respond to darkness or terror. That when you enter into a dark region or when there is terror, the pupil tends to contract. So this contraction of the pupil is lost. There is drooping of the superior eyelid. This is known as ptosis, which results because the tarsal muscles are now paralyzed, as well as the part of the levator palpebrae superioris, which was getting the sympathetic innervation, gets paralyzed. So again, there is drooping of the superior eyelid, and this is known as ptosis. The sinking in of the eye takes place again due to paralysis of the smooth orbitalis muscle in the floor of the orbit. This is known as enophthalmos. Vasodilation and absence of sweating on the face and neck. क्योंकि वो रेमाए जो cervical nerves के साथ जा रहे थे, especially from C1 to C4, which was basically supplying the head and neck area. There is vasodilation and absence of sweating on the face and neck. This results in a condition known as anhidrosis, caused by lack of sympathetic nerve supply to the blood vessels and the sweat glands. So this is the anatomical basis of the Horner syndrome, which you should know very well. You should be able to write about the cervical sympathetic trunk and then explain these conditions. This would help you to write the question on the anatomical basis of Horner syndrome.